Now, and again, when they feel better, you're going to be very, very happy with the progress both of you have contributed into that. Now, this last cycle of addiction is my own cycle of addiction, which is called the new addiction cycle. It's actually in the book, The Final Freedom, which is a book I've written on sexual addiction. And really, this one is a little different in that it kind of goes through kind of stages. All right. Now, you probably might see this again, so you might want to be aware of that. This would be something that you would be needing to be familiar with. Now, the first one is, in this model, there is some kind of pain agent. Now, the pain agent can fall into 4 or more categories. Let me cover the first 4. Emotional discomfort. I feel alone. I feel rejected. I feel unimportant. I feel pain. I was ashamed, or whatever. I am in emotional pain. That could be the pain agent. Number 2, unresolved conflict. You've got this nagging thing that you're not dealing with a mother-in-law, father-in-law, your wife, or husband, or neighbor, or someone you're in conflict with, but you're not really, it's not resolved, and you kind of got this angst, and that angst creates pain, okay? Addicts don't do good with pain, all right? Number 3, stress. Okay, you're overwhelmed, you're overworked, you got several projects going on, and that can be very, very negatively seen and as a pain agent. Number 4 is a need to connect. Inside all of us is a need to connect. Addicts need to connect. Now, some of us don't feel like we have the skills to really do that adequately. And so we have a need, but not necessarily the skill set to fulfill that need. And so that need goes unmet. And that unmet need in our heart to connect with another person, to really feel intimacy, really feel connected, can be painful if it's not met. And that pain, see, one of these 4 things could be the pain agent that kind of stimulates the whole package. Okay, a pain agent comes and boom, then it moves you possibly to the next thing. Number 2, disassociation. The addict begins to disconnect from reality. Reality is painful, reality hurts, reality has a need or some kind of conflict, something I want to avoid. I don't want to be in reality. Reality stinks for me today. So I am going to start disconnecting. I'm going to start disassociation. That could include moving into some fantasies, some thoughts, getting triggered, using triggers, scanning people that you would be sexually attracted to, and doing these kind of things that kind of disconnect you from the world you're in. And now you start kind of moving towards the other world, kind of like space, the final frontier. You start moving. The starship starts getting out of the port there, and it's just ready to start taking off because it's starting to disassociate from its port, and the addict starts to disassociate from its reality, and so it starts to move. The addict starts to move down the road in disassociation. Then number 3, a complete altered state. You have now disengaged from reality, and you now are living in your mind somewhere else. This other woman, other man loves you, wants you, desires you. You could have a happy ending with them. Things would be better on the other side. Grass is greener on the other side. If I could just get this fixed with this person, this individual, this internet person, this image, if I can just have a blonde or a brunette or a redhead, if I could have 2 instead of 1, whatever would happen, you start moving into this altered state, and all of a sudden you start unzipping into another world. And what happens is you are now probably in the place where if you don't make a significant decision, you're going to probably get hurt as an addict. Now, after the altered state is number 4, pursuing behaviors. You start getting online, you start calling the persons up, you start cruising, grooming, or facilitating some way to act out so that you can get this this itch scratched in some way, okay? You're disassociative, and now you're moving forward. A lot of wives describe this as, he's got the glazed eyes, okay? He's starting to check out on me, okay? When a sex addict does kind of check out and goes to the altered state, this can be very, very concerning. But if they actually start moving towards behavior, now the starship has not only moved away from the port, it's starting to hit the thrusters and it's starting to go into a direction. Okay? Now, when the addict starts going into a direction, this is a significant part of the addiction cycle. Then, number 5, behavior. Whatever that is. They got a prostitute, they got sex with themselves, they acted out, they got into a chat room, they did whatever they want to do. The behavior actually occurs. Okay? And this is kind of the crescendo of the acting out experience. Now, where this cycle differs from some of the others, I have experience with sex addicts. Some do feel guilt and shame after their behavior. Some absolutely feel no guilt and shame afterwards. They just kind of keep going down the road. So the last part in the Weiss cycle is number 6, time. Just time. Time could be hours, minutes, days, weeks, or even months until one of the pain agents show back up. And something triggers them to start moving down the road. And they start going into disassociating, the altered state, pursuing behavior and behavior. Okay, so time is not necessarily the addict's friend if there isn't new behaviors, new strategies put in place. Because time can actually become the enemy, because it's what they've used in the gap between acting out again and again. So the cycle has to be intervened at some place. Now, of course, if you can, as a clinician, if you can help them see their pain agents, whatever those feelings are, unmet needs, conflicts, stuff like that, you would be really, really helping them. If they can see that, those issues for themselves, see them as triggers, know that they're triggers, and they can start moving in a productive way, a healthy way, then you can shut it down there. You can shut down the triggers there. But if not, training them of when they disconnect, when they leave reality, when they start going into their head, when they start going into the fantasy world, if they start moving from disassociating to altered state, helping them, training them to be able to see, ooh, I'm starting to leave. I'm no longer here in my marriage, in the real world, at school or at work. I am actually somewhere else. I need at this point to do some kind of intervention to get me back grounded in reality. If the addict does not get grounded in reality, then what can happen is the cycle will repeat again and again and again and again and again. And this particular cycle of addiction allows for differences in personalities. What's pain for one person is not pain for another person. Some person gets yelled at by their spouse and they're gone. They're going to go act out because rejection is their key emotional pain. Another person is feeling bored and that's their trigger to go do that. Okay, so again, finding out what the things are for the addict can be very helpful, and giving them, as we will give you plenty of behavioral tools. You will have so many tools in your tool chest by the time you walk out of this class that you will feel confident that you can contribute to the recovery of a sex addict. And you can do that. So the cycles we talked about, let's just kind of briefly kind of go back over. You've got the Schneider and Irons, the acting in, acting out kind of pattern. Okay, and then we also covered in Carnes, we have the initiation, the establishment, the escalating phase, the acute phase. We have that cycle kind of going along, all right? Then we also took some things from Goodman and walked through some of those ideas, and one of the things that he contributed there is also the cycle of other addictions, or the interactiveness of other addictions. Where one starts here, moves to this one, moves to this one, moves to this one, that one brings them back to here. We need to see sometimes those concentric circles of the addict. And lastly, we also talked about with Goodman's insights was the positive and negative reinforcement schedule. Which is your client going for and why, and helping them to see that. Okay, so a lot of like either or kind of boxes. And then we came to the Weiss model, which is really more a model of kind of seeing how someone progresses from one stage to the other stage to the next stage. And so let me give you kind of a story here to make the last cycle we talked about make sense to you. I need to just think for a second. Now, as we continue, just to hang with me a little bit longer on the cycle here, I want you as a clinician or as a future clinician, I want you to be able to identify some of the things you need to do to help the client, okay? Help the client. You now have some cycle patterns you can look at. I want you to be able, when you're talking to someone face to face, okay, to be able to, once you figure out what cycle they kind of use, to do the following. Number one, I want you to identify the ingredients in the cycle. Let them tell you what are the ingredients. Is it the way I'm getting dressed? Do I take a shower? Do I wear particular clothes? Do I have particular things? What are the ingredients that are involved in my addictive cycle? Like for Joe. Joe might be someone who he likes to expose. So his ritual is getting in his car after hours, driving to certain parts of the neighborhood, maybe a college campus, finding a young lady who's by herself, and then exposing himself and seeing what kind of reaction he gets, and then depending on the reaction, he will either continue the behavior or discontinue the behavior. Okay, so we know for Joe, he's got to get in his car after a certain time. Well, that's important information. We know he's got to drive a certain place. That's important information. So setting up boundaries for Joe would be very, very helpful. Now, it also could be that you're dealing with Janet. Janet might be, her ritual might be lying to her husband where she's going. That's number one. Number two, going to a certain location, maybe a certain bar, a certain hangout, or she hooks up on the internet, meeting that person, acting out with that person, and then having some ritual afterwards of covering it up or making up whatever story she needs to justify her time. Now, every addict has some ingredients in their addiction. You finding the ingredients can help them actually put together the cycle for you. Okay? Because here's the ingredients, here's what it looks like. Oh, okay, so here's where you go to your altered state, or here's how you start acting in, here's where you start escalating. Are these established rituals? Has this been a way you've done this for 15 years? Are these a small pattern of behavior? Okay, good, we have a language now. This is your ritual, okay? This is your established pattern. Whatever you want to do, you need to establish the ingredients in the cycle.